How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to Agave and Cactus Talk. Today we're going to be talking about really nice agave, one of my favorites as of late, and that is Agave Desmettiana Variegata, or variegated Agave Desmettiana, also is known as smooth agave here in the United States because it doesn't have any of those marginal spines, leading a lot of people to call it spineless. But as we always mention in the podcast, spineless doesn't necessarily mean spineless overall. It just may mean it lacks a terminal or the marginal spines. So in Agave Desmettiana's case, it still has terminal spines at the end of its leaf, but it lacks the more vicious or crazy marginal teeth that are on the edges of the leaves that usually are causing people issues, and livestock don't as readily eat because of them. So for instance, cattle, goats, sheep, they readily eat plants like Fucrea, Foetida medio picta, Agave Desmettiana, Agave attenuata, because while they'll have terminal spines, they lack marginal spines and are usually a softer leaf, and they're much more malleable and easily digestible by them because they're less rigid. So Agave Desmettiana is a very interesting agave to me because, first off, it's an agave that is native to Mexico, but where I was born in Jalisco, it's naturalized, I believe. So there's Agave Desmettiana growing in the forest, all over Jalisco. Yeah, so for the longest, I believe that Agave Desmettiana didn't really have a lot of potential because I had spoken with people in Jalisco that worked the non-variegated form of Agave Desmettiana, just the original. And, they had told me that these were very fast-growing agaves, sometimes maturing in 2 to 3 years, and that these agaves didn't have a very high Brix. Many of the times they had 4 or 5 Brix, which is, in distiller terms, it's a very poor sugar concentration level, right, which is the Brix. So that means you got to work a whole bunch of them to try to find some spirits, right, or to make some spirits. So at first I thought it was an agave I really wouldn't explore, right, because I also, besides the Brix being low on the original Agave Desmettiana, it was relatively small, so it would grow 2 to 4 feet wide, which interestingly enough is the max width that a lot of the growers in the United States give for Agave Desmettiana Variegata, which is total bullshit. I'll just tell you straight up, because I've seen Agave Desmettiana Variegatas countless times, dozens of times, grow much larger than 4 feet. Many of the ones that I harvested from my garden are consistently in between 6 to 8 feet wide and up to 5 feet tall, sometimes even 6 feet tall. And, they'll be giving even up to 1,000 bulbs, some of them. So, they could get pretty large. Flower stalks could even get 15, 16 feet tall and pretty thick. Not all of them can do that, obviously, especially if, a lot of the times in gardens they're planted in close proximity to each other, so they don't have the space or resources to develop to their full maturity size, But yeah, so because of the size of Agave Desmettiana in Mexico being so small and the Brix being so bad, I didn't really see how I would utilize them in the United States. And I also knew that their cold hardiness, was 20 to 25 Fahrenheit, depending on irrigation and soils and stuff. And I knew that from growing them all over LA County. And, while a lot of people know that the western portion of LA County doesn't usually get under 40 Fahrenheit, everything to the north of the LA forest and the San Gabriel Mountains in LA County does get under 40 Fahrenheit. Majority of those places get down to 20 Fahrenheit. In my case, I get down to 14 Fahrenheit, and that is, if you told someone in LA County, yeah, there's places that get down to 14 Fahrenheit, it's rare for them to think that way, but, there's even places in the LA forest like Pearl Blossom that, I've had clients that I've worked for that they get 4 feet of snow, right? And they're in LA County, and it gets cold as heck where they're at. So LA County has a lot of different microclimates. That's why I really love it. I tell people we have every species of agave growing in LA, most likely, because it's just like we have all these different climate zones, and people are really about agave. So all over the county, people are growing it, and now I've started farming it alongside other farmers. So we're bringing cultivation of agave to LA County, which traditionally isn't a very agricultural place, but agave allows for smaller farms. For instance, many agave farms in Mexico are just 2 to maybe 20 acres in size, and a lot of the small farms I'm seeing in the United States starting up are actually less than 40 acres themselves. So I'm seeing a lot of small farms see agave as a potential crop for them, and they're what would I call it? There really isn't these super large farms yet entering the space, except for a handful, right? That's definitely going to change in the next year or two, and it's changing as we speak. But most of the farms started in California, I would say, in numbers, are small acreage, right? But that, I tell people this all the time, like there's a handful of farmers that have collectively as much acreage as the rest of the small farmers in California. So that balance can be upsetted relatively quickly, like it has been in Mexico. And that's something we should watch out for, because when the corporations and mass growers take over in the United States like they did in Mexico, the price will be very, very low. And I probably shouldn't be going down this path, but it's like today the USDA released their almond numbers, right? And the almond growers are going to go, many of them bankrupt, and many of them are not profitable now because almond prices took about a 20% hit overnight. And some of the largest people entering the agave space are almond farmers themselves, and very much know how to do monoculture at scale. We'll put it that way, right? And hey, Cholo, stop it, Cholo. You push them, you don't fucking bite them. And yeah, so this is something that could potentially come to agave very quickly, and I believe is already coming to agave very quickly in California. But specifically with Agave Tequiliana and Espadín. So I definitely predict within 10 years the Agave, Espadín, and Tequiliana will be on the floor in the United States as well because of overproduction. If this agave has nowhere to go, then the price will drop dramatically. So for instance, like I know that large grower plans on making its own distillery, but he also is one of the largest sellers of agave in the United States, probably at this point, alongside with me. And he's not doing it how I am with a bunch of diverse species. He's selling those 2 species. So while he may be able to use his agave, what happens to the 100 million or whatever agave he puts out in the next decade or whatever, right? That could be potentially setting up the industry for failure. I'm trying to set up everyone with a bunch of different agaves so they have lots of different options and can play the markets, right? Because if everybody's agave is maturing at 5 years from now and they all have one species, then the price could significantly drop to a level where it's not profitable really for anybody, right? But you have to understand that if everyone is growing all these different species and they mature at different rates and they mature at different time frames, and you know, you're going to have some agaves being harvested every year, and you're going to have some agaves that are different every time and every season. And agave is a thing that you don't have to harvest all at one time, for instance, like almonds. So you could harvest throughout the year at different months, different stages. And the point being is the diversity of agave and crops is going to allow a farmer to be adaptable, right? If the price is significant, very, very low, for instance, he may choose to quiote his agave and wait another year to harvest, or if he has slower growing, more diverse species than Espadín and Tequiliana, when the price is, very low for those crops, he could sell those crops at a great price and, still be profitable. Or, for instance, if everybody is, distilling a crazy amount of certain species and then they run out, well, you have agaves that are at different maturities already, and you could potentially harvest in time frames when the market is at a plus, right? So it's kind of like what I explained to people my family does with agave tequiliana in Mexico. Like, we really never lose, although the market is shit right now. So, for instance, a couple years ago, agave was really high, and we were selling like crazy agave. And, right now the market's shit, so we're just feeding it to cattle and still making money on the cattle, right? So you adapt yourself by, or you give yourself adaptability by planting in different years, different seasons, and always having some agave available. Because if you harvest it all at one point and it's a bad point to harvest and there's no real market for it, you're screwed, right? That's happened in Mexico right now. There's 80 million agave tequiliana that could be used by the whole tequila industry, and there's 300 million plants. That's why it's going to abandonment. That's why it's less than, a peso a kilo, which is insane. That's like 0.05. So that's like 5 cents for 2.2 pounds of agave piña after harvest, right? I mean, per pound, you're probably looking at like 2 cents. Like, that's insane. That's a very unprofitable price, and we want to stay away from mass production of one particular species and one particular time in the United States, or really anywhere globally. That's something that I believe is a valuable lesson for everybody, not just us, right? But getting back to Agave Desmettiana, we really sidetracked there. Agave Desmettiana, I did not see a lot of potential in it because of that low brix, the size, and the cold tolerance, right? So what I started finding here, right, was that in my garden I had various agaves that were growing at the same time and flowering at the same time as my Desmettianas, and a lot of them were hybridizing. And a lot of those bulbs that I was planting and seed that I was planting from those Desmettianas were a lot more cold hardy, and they were a lot larger in piña size, and they got a lot taller. And, now I have Desmettianas that could take 14 to 18 Fahrenheit, and that's almost a 10 Fahrenheit improvement on the whole species, which has got me thinking, to be honest with you, that it's not a pure agave Desmettiana, right? Because I know that during the flower stalk maturation, the agaves are very promiscuous and they love to cross-pollinate, not only with agave, but really lots of things like Manfredas, and people have hybridized them with polyanthus, and it looks to be that the agave is easily hybridizable. How do you say that? Hybridizable by various members of the Asparagus family. And what I'm realizing is that these hybrids, for whatever reason, whether it was an agave Desmettiana cross-pollinating with another agave, or just, going through a certain mutation during its life that led the new seed and bulb to have that genetic variation, it has led to Desmettianas that are now cold hardy for me. And some of the ones that aren't cold hardy, I've learned to grow them already with using shade tarps, how I was explaining in the previous podcast with Fukurea, right? So I've got a lot of hope for the Desmettiana, and I tell people too about the bulbs. It's like a lot of people say, oh, the bulbs are genetically alike to the mother plant. That's bullshit, dude. I mean, show me the research that shows that, right? Because I could pinpoint to research that shows that the mother plant is shooting out different genetic variations within those bulbs, so that the next generation of agave is different, right? And much like seed, bulbous agaves use bulbs to slightly change and make the better generation or the next generation better. And I've found this out at first because I've had countless, hundreds and hundreds of mutations on my different agave, and that have been bulbous. And those agave grow at different rates, different sizes, different bricks levels and stuff. And what I've realized is that the bulbs give an extreme amount of genetic differentiation. Among themselves, the bulbs may be very similar, many of them, but there is usually a 5 to 10% genetic variance that is very significant in the bulbs. And I'm realizing this by seeing all these new agaves popping out of the bulbous agave. But my point is, I believe Desmettiana, because it's starting to become naturalized in California, has been hybridizing and evolving, because it's almost twice the size of the agave Desmettianas that are available in Jalisco and around Mexico. And many of the cultivars have marginal spines, which is something Desmettiana lacks in Mexico, which makes me think that a lot of the Desmettiana Variegata in LA has become, it's a multi-generation hybrid at this point, because you have lots of agaves growing for the past 300 years, 200 years in LA, right? Ever since the missions, and they've been co-growing in the spaces like gardens or missions or businesses, properties, and they're developing an evolution, right, by hybridizing. So these Desmettianas have become a little bit bigger, a little bit cold hardier, a little bit hot hardier, and a little bit more sun tolerant, because a lot of the Desmettiana in Jalisco I see growing in very shaded areas, which may explain the low bricks, to be honest. We've had lots of debates, me and my friends, over that, but not very sure on that one. But agave Desmettiana, right? This shit was just interesting me more and more that I cultivated it, because they went from an agave that I really disliked because of its cold hardiness to just giving it a shot and finding out that a lot of the agave Desmettiana that I had might be some of the best agave Desmettiana around, because it was coming from gardens that had been, like, even my agave Desmettianas, majority of them were recycled from gardens and put into my gardens or my farms. And I started realizing these were way different than the shit that was being tissue cultured and brought in from Mexico. So this interested me a lot, right? Because maybe, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, when was it? In 2019 was some of the first times that I distilled agave Desmettiana. And I, from then to now, have probably harvested almost, I don't know, a couple hundred agave Desmettianas. And those agave Desmettianas, many of them, I've cultivated them here on the farm, and I got thousands and tens of thousands of them now. But those agaves never have been under a 50-pound piña, and 45 to 50-pound piña, and many of them have been over 100 pounds. I've had some that have been 110 pounds, and these Desmettianas, they interest me a lot. on, Yo-Yo, let's go. Let's go, Yo-Yo. Yeah, they interest me a lot because there's just so much potential for the piñas, right? And in Mexico, the piñas were relatively small and low bricks. And another thing, not one of the Desmettianas that I've harvested has been under, 28 bricks. Many of them have been even very, very close to 40, 38, 39s, And that's a very good sugar concentration level. It's got, like I said, many of them are 6 to 8 feet wide, even I would say 9 feet wide, some of them. And those leaves are providing lots of forage for my animals. And the flower stalks are providing lots of bulbs, which I could propagate and make lots of money. So these Desmettianas have become quite lucrative for me. So I've gotten over the fact that they're not as strong on the cold as many, and I'm just trying to prioritize the ones that are the coldest or the hardiest with the cold. And hopefully we could just have a bunch of Desmettiana going everywhere around the USA, because if they could take, down to 14 or 15, now they can double up the states they could go to pretty much, So right now I've probably sent Desmettiana to 10 plus states. People are growing them successfully in Oregon, Washington, Texas, Oklahoma. We got them in Florida. A couple different states. And if I can just cultivate these out to where they can bulb and seed, the cold hardy ones that I have that are lasting this winter, then we got something there, right? That's going to be real interesting. And not to mention the 300 different types of fucking mutated Desmettiana I have that, they're very interesting, because it's like many of them are completely yellow. And if you know about plants a little bit, they lack chlorophyll as much as the green versions, right? So they're not growing as quickly. But what is a slower growing Agave Desmettiana going to bring? I'm not sure. It may have a larger piña size, or it may have a larger stock, or it may just be lucrative for collectors. Who knows? Each one of these different new looking Desmettianas could be something. So my job is to just be kind of like a lab and see the best ones, and that's what we're trying to bring out to different people. But I've mentioned multiple times, like, I have a lot of agaves that I've hybridized or created, and I don't bring them out to the public because I'm not even sure how the fuck they grow. But I do bring some out. Like, I listed like 10 mutated Agave Desmettianas, and a lot of people have been looking at them and stuff, and I've sold a few of them. But it's not like something I'm really trying to pursue, because I'd like to farm them. Desmettiana has a very, very sweet flavor. It's one of my, I always say this, it's one of my favorite flavors, but it's like, damn, each one of these flavors is so fucking unique, man. And Desmettiana has a very sweet flavor. I would say like honey, but it's even sweeter than that. Very, very low amount of bitterness on it. Agave Desmettiana has a lot of potential to be distilled and farmed in California, because 20 to 25 Fahrenheit low on the many cultivars I have, 15 Fahrenheit low. That applies to the majority of California, and the majority of California, where they're receiving, I would say, over 8 inches of rain, could probably dry farm this, because I dry farm them on 2 inches, and I'm using a lot of rainwater that I collect to specifically water them over, for instance, an Angustifolia marginata or an Americana, which are much better dry farm agaves. These could probably live anywhere, from the coast all the way inland to probably like 80 miles, dry farm, no problem. If you're in Santa Barbara, a lot of people ask me about Desmettiana in Santa Barbara. Fuck, they'll just grow there, no problem. You plant them in the rainy season, and they're just going to establish themselves and grow amazingly. That's the type of stuff you need, to be honest with you, because you don't want to have agave that is going to be extremely water hogging, and that's going to make you pay a lot of money, right? It's like, you've seen what Sigma is fucking doing right now. Now they're charging you per acre to utilize your well. They're charging you per acre foot that you're taking out, and for even participation. And then, it's like all these groundwater things, man, they're just beginning. Do not sleep on the fact that your water will be the cheapest today that it ever will be, right? Within our lifetimes, expect water to triple or quadruple in cost, and that's not even like, oh, that's fucking conspiracy or whatever. No, man. I mean, California has grown, from the 70s. It's grown its population by tens millions. And guess what? We have the same fucking water. All of that population growth has come with us cutting and cutting and cutting and cutting water. And the only way we're going to be building more properties out and hooking them up to our water grids is to utilize that same water. And there's only less of it than there was in 1970. So, point is, groundwater is now being regulated. Surface water is super regulated. City water is super regulated and expensive. So, start shifting over to crops that you can potentially dry farm completely, because the water's only getting more expensive, man. And in many places, they're just getting cut off fucking completely. You get me? Look over Porter Valley, right? They're cutting their water off. Many of their wells now have run dry, and they're cutting them off so that these people, their water could be sent down to giant corporations that farm almonds. It's fucking the worst, stupidest shit ever, dude. But if you're familiar with the water history of California, it's like you already know that our great state water bank in Kern County was given over to some certain farmers, right? So it's like the politics are always jacking our water, dude. Or the politicians, our farmers, they're jacking our freaking water and giving it to these giant corporations. So, do you believe there will be less of that or more of that? Like, there will definitely be more of fucking that, man. Yeah, they're cutting us off completely. They're cutting us, for instance, 75% in Lake Variegata. They're cutting us, 50% in many areas. Many areas, they're now not allowing you to drill new wells, right? This is something that's only going to expand. So, dry farming Desmettiana, very attractive. Agave Desmettiana, just to let you know, can be utilized for a vast variety of stuff, just like most, large agaves. You could do agua miel from it. You can make pulque from, fermenting the agua miel. You can distill that agua miel and make, agua miel distillate. Or you can distill the pulque and make pulque distillate. You can make biofuels like biomethane, biohydrogen, bioethanol. You can utilize for silage the leaves, or utilize a direct feed, because I told you it has low spines. I feed them directly to my sheep and my goats and my rabbits, and chopped up and stuff to the birds like the chickens. So, it's got a wide application here, and it's not high in saponins, so you can approach it from that angle like you would Valmoriana or Habali. You can make spirits, you can make wine, you can make different drinks out of it, different syrups and inulins and powdered sugars if you wanted, and fibers, ropes, baskets, clothing. Could be used in construction materials as siding, flooring, potentially even insulation. It's got a lot of applications together, right? So Desmettiana fits in on a lot of those applications. Not the strongest fiber, which may actually be more of use, right? So it's like, while Forcroides or Parviflora or Lechugia might have stronger fibers, softer fibers might be something that may be better for insulation, right? Versus the stronger fibers may be better for flooring or for clothing, right? So each agave may have an application in that industry, but may have different applications within that industry. So take that into account. Agave Desmettiana. Yeah, so as I mentioned, it's a bulbous agave. It can produce anywhere, I've seen The lowest I've seen is probably 150 bulbs. The highest I've seen is probably 1,200, maybe 1,500 bulbs. It could produce, the highest I've seen is probably 60 pups in its lifetime. Lowest maybe 5 to 10, It could grow very quickly. I've seen them mature, the ones that I sell and that are most commonly in the U.S., the Agave, Desmettiana, Variegata. I've seen those mature in anywhere from 4 to 7 years. The longest, largest ones, maybe 8, but they're very quick growing for an agave species. Even in full shade, a lot of the times I see them grow very quickly. That may be due to their original genetics, as we discussed. They're from a lot of forest areas, or they're growing under trees and shit, kind of like Maximilianas. And the interesting part is I've seen that, like, in full sun they'll grow, they'll get big and shit, but like in the little partial shade, oh, that's the spot, man. And that, like Maximiliana, Desmettiana, that little partial shade spot under trees and shit, that's the Mangava spot, I call it too, because Mangaves love those little microclimates where it's always a little bit shaded, a little bit partial sun, Mangaves, a lot of them you want to give them under 8 hours of sun, many of them. To maintain those colorations. They'll still live out full sun and shit, but in full sun they're not going to have those colorations. They do need some filtered light. So yeah, Agave Desmettiana, man, that shit produces a lot of fucking pups. It's what I call a triple threat. Agave produces the seeds, the bulbs, and the hijuelos, or the pups, or the scions, whatever you want to call them. And Agave Desmettiana also, as I mentioned, produces a very large flower stalk that you can roast, eat, consume, even chop up, ferment, and make wine or spirits from, if it's good enough bricks. 1 second, real quick. What I was going to mention is that in a lot of online plant info directories like San Marcos, they'll mention that Desmettiana does not need irrigation. And I think this is because a lot of those nurseries on the west side of California, right, where, like I was mentioning, they could dry farm them. But if you're going to bring them into the Mojave Desert or anywhere where you got really hot summers, like extremely hot summers, make sure to irrigate them, or they're going to die. You don't need to crazy irrigate them and shit. Obviously, wet feet will probably rot them and kill them. I've seen that be a consistent problem with a lot of people planting Agave Desmettiana in NorCal, in areas where they might receive over 20 inches of rain a year, because the problem is they may receive a lot of that all at once, and then it stays in their soil, because a lot of that shit is clay, and it's not filtering, and then, yeah, they just rot and die because they got wet feet. So take that into account as well. If you are in Northern California, I would choose very rocky slopes to plant these in, and try to stay away where water pools up a lot. So, as I mentioned, the Agave Desmettiana has a lot of genetic variety. They may pop out from bulbs and seed, and some of the particularly beautiful species that I've seen are Agave Desmettiana, what's it called real quick? Let me check. Galactic Traveler. And, there's also Agave Desmettiana Joe's Hope, which I have. That was developed in Miami, Florida. Most of these agaves, you want to actually, they have a lower cold hardiness. So, like, instead of a 20 to 25, you can expect many of them to have a 30 to 35 cold hardiness. And, the nicer the agave gets, a lot of the times, like I mentioned, those yellow Desmettianas, they're a little bit weaker. They are a little bit weaker. So you have to take that into account too if you do see some genetic variations. Like, it may be good in one way, but not as good in another way, right? So that is something I've been noticing a lot on mutated ones. But the interesting thing, you'll almost never see regular Agave Desmettiana in the United States, and that's something that is very surprising to me. I don't know why that is. And the weird shit is that the few places that they've used Agave Desmettiana, in distilled spirits in the United States, they list it as Agave Desmettiana, not Agave Desmettiana Variegata. So they're probably mislabeling that, to be honest with you, because there really is no originals here. I've fucking been in some of the best gardens in California, I would say, and I've never fucking seen one here. And I've seen some of the rarest agaves that even are rare in Mexico here. So that has brought interest to me. That's something that's kind of weird. I don't know why the hell that's happening. Yeah. So Agave Desmettiana, growing it here in the Mojave Desert. Many of the first generations have had to shade tarp. Success, different generations in succession haven't had to be as shade tarped or watered as much. Looks like they're evolving to the Mojave Desert, which is great for me. But that's why I always mention that the mother plant is maybe more of importance than the actual species, because an Agave Desmettiana coming from California is going to be very different to an Agave Desmettiana that is naturalized in Florida, for example, which have very low bricks from what I've seen, and from Jalisco, which is the same shit, have very low bricks from what I've seen. So it looks like the naturalized form is growing very, very fast in Jalisco or Florida, but they're fucking horrible for farming. So, yeah, I've seen a lot of people, for instance, picking bulbs off the side of the road, and, like one of my friends in Florida did that, and it's you don't want to waste 5-8 years realizing that this agave is a piece of shit. Make sure that where you buy or you source from is like a legit source, because yeah, there's a lot of bad agave out there, man. And I mean, it's great for nature, but it's bad for us. Yeah, and shameless plug there, right? Like, I definitely have Agave Desmettiana plants and 4, 6 inch and 1 gal pots, and I also have bulbs, rooted or unrooted. The unrooted bulbs, fresh off stocks, are usually $1 to $2, depending on quantity sizes that you buy. If you buy, anything over 250 plants, they're usually $1. Rooted plants are basically like 50% more. Sometimes if they've grown quite a bit, they could be double, so they could be $2 to $4. And then, they just will grow in price till 1 gal being around $9 to $10. A lot of the times, I'm selling 5 gals if I got a shit ton of them at, $15, but most of the time I try to sell them at 20. That's just usually when I got them like on sales and stuff, which can happen. And then, yeah, I've got a lot of different mutated. Like I got cultivar High Vista, which I made here in High Vista. I got a bunch of other numbered cultivars listed on eBay and Etsy if you do want to purchase like a weird ass one. But if you want to farm them anywhere in California, I also do consulting, and I can help you with making sure that it's a prosperous crop for you, and also hook you up with the plants. Because a lot of people will sell you the plants. For instance, I'm seeing a lot of people right now selling Agave Tequiliana, and they're selling it to people that, in their climate, that plant is going to fucking die. So you definitely won't get that from me. I had a grower reach out the other day, and he was like, hey, I'd love to plant some Agave Desmettiana. And I was like, you know what, where you live, probably Angustifolia subspecies marginata is a better bet, because Desmettiana is a little bit too, is not as cold hardy for your area, right? She lives in an area where it gets down to 10 to 15. So Agave Angustifolia marginata could readily take that, which is probably the most cold hardy Agave Angustifolia. Pacifica, Tequiliana, Espadin, their cold hardinesses are usually 27 to 30, so most of California is off limits for them, east of the coast. Yeah, I've seen people planting it in the Mojave, and I'm just, at some point people start thinking you're a hater, but it's like, I'm tired of telling people that shit's not going to work, but you should be doing your research. If you're spending tens of thousands of dollars on starting a farm, and you're choosing the wrong plant, like, to be honest, that's on you. I'll try to help you if you come to me, but a lot of people, I don't even put that on them, like the growers that aren't telling people, because It should be on the actual farmer to know what the fuck he's planting. But because this is such a new crop, that error is happening a lot, and I'm trying to prevent that with my clients. So none of my clients have had agave die from cold. So that is a success, at least there. One thing I just wanted to mention is that, if you do get frost or snow, you will need to protect Agave Desmettiana, unless you're getting some of those cultivars that are a little bit more cold hardy. And a lot of that is still experimental, as I mentioned. So, and can vary a lot. I mean, it doesn't matter if the cold hardy Agave Desmettiana is planted in a place in NorCal where it's very cold, if it just gets wet as fuck, right? So, cold hardiness, it's variable with the amount of water, the soil, and the climate that is affecting that plant too. And that's where, a lot of these guides that prevent or tell you info about an agave, you have to take that shit with a grain of salt, because a lot of the times at your elevation, at your, different soil, it's all going to be way different, and you need to realize that, right? So when something is working for someone, you may try to apply it on your farm, but you need to adapt it in the way that your farm is going to be receiving that plant and growing that plant, right? Yeah. I also wanted to mention that, I have probably over 15,000 Agave Desmettiana that are available to farmers, like, right away right now. So I've been selling a grip of them. Probably I've sold like 15,000 of them in the past 2 months. And, a lot of farmers in California, Texas, Florida are trying them out. But if you're looking for a bulk supplier, definitely let me know, and we can, hook you up with some. And, a lot of the times too, my bulk buyers, they're buying 3 to 5 different species. So they might grab Agave Desmettiana Variegata. They might grab, a bunch of pups of Decipiens. They might grab a bunch of Fukurea, a bunch of Agave Angustifolia Marginata. You can mix and match a lot of the times too. I have no problem doing that on bulk orders as well. Usually shipping on bulk orders is free, so don't have to worry about that. I also have a lot of seed from Agave Angustifolia Marginata, and I did have a lot of seed of Agave Desmettiana, but I sold it all. So a lot of that, people like to start from seed, so it goes pretty quick because they are bulbous agave that don't produce a lot of seed. So, the Agave Angustifolia Marginata is a rare case where it produces a lot of seed and bulb. Vilmoriana and Desmettiana, they produce a lot of bulb, but they don't produce a lot of seed. So, and they're very small seeds and harder to start because of that as well. So that's just one thing to take into account with Agave Desmettiana. Yeah, Agave Desmettiana here in the Mojave Desert, I think it's going to be a great crop to be growing. It's got a lot of different applications, and, as I mentioned, it's a great crop for animals, so I'm feeding a lot of it to my animals and, making good money with the goats, so I'm really stoked about that. It's an agave that doesn't require a lot of irrigation, and, it provides a lot of new offshoots and bulbs and stuff, right? So I tell people, I'm like, hey, say an Agave Desmettiana gives you a 100-pound piña or a 50-pound piña, and you're able to sell that here in the United States for $3 a pound or whatever. And so say you get $150 to $300 a piña, and then you could sell 1,000 bulbs at $1 each or whatever, and you make 1,000. Or you can turn this 200-300-pound agave into 600 pounds of silage that you might sell for maybe, I don't know, $1,000 or something. I mean, there are probably dozens of ways that you can make this agave into a much more profitable crop than with spirits. And people think, we only want to do spirits here in California. And while a lot of the people starting agave farms here want to do spirits, a lot of us don't. And I would, I'm building a biodigester, as I mentioned in my Fukurea podcast, probably in 2026 at the beginning of the year. And I'm going to be throwing a fuck ton of Agave Desmettiana in there and making biomethane from it to run my heating and my cooking. So I
obviously if I have to go buy a whole propane tank, that shit could be really expensive, and or to go fill it up or whatever. And every tank that I don't have to fill up is money more in my pocket. And the same with the heating, right? Like I would love to heat my greenhouses, but it's expensive. But if I got free biomethane, fuck it, I'll fucking heat them. Or I would love to heat myself all the time and keep all my spaces nice and warm in the winter, but it's expensive, right? Especially because I run on solar here. So if I could do that with biomethane, I would love to do that. So the point that I'm trying to make you realize here is, as an agave farmer, okay, look, maybe your agave Desmettiana is going to be ready in 4 or 5 years. Cool. And why not keep some of them for bulbs so you don't have to buy more plants later? Why not keep some of those bulbs so you can sell? Why not create some for stalks and just harvest the stalks and seed? Why not, harvest some for biofuels, or some for silage, or some for maybe clothing manufacturers, maybe sell some stocks to surfboard manufacturers or packaging manufacturers, or maybe you start up a small side hustle that might want to explore one of those insulation, packaging options, or construction options. The point being is, find the fucking niche that makes you the money. Don't be over here thinking that spirits is the only thing in town, and that's the only way to make money with Agave Desmettiana or any other agave in the book. Okay? Diversify yourself, not only with species, but with what you're going to do with your agave, right? You got 5 years in many cases to see where you're going to put this agave. Start talking to manufacturers of clothing, of fucking, supplements, because a lot of these agaves have inulin and different chemicals that may be supplements for humans and or maybe pets, or you don't know. You don't know where this agave may take you, So explore whatever option you feel may lead to you being able to sell your agave, right? And I want you to be open to that, right? Like, you're having coffee, you're hoping I run a clothing company and I'm looking for alternative fibers. Start selling yourself. Don't be over there waiting for fucking, year 5 to see where do I put this agave. Look for years for the players that when the time is ready, you have many options. Because I'm going to tell you what, people will tell you, yes, I will take your agave. And when the time comes, they're not going to take it, okay? They're not going to take it. So you need to have a lot of options, because you may have 20 options, and only 4 of those motherfuckers are going to come through for you in 5 years. Maybe only 2 of those 4 motherfuckers are actually even going to be in business or the same business in 4 or 5 years. So take all that into account. That's why I tell a lot of people with agave, most businesses don't make it 5-10 years in America. And our business is a long-term business. You need to be adaptable. You need to be able to adapt and have lots of different species, right? And people, they tell me, oh, I want clones for Agave Tecliana and Espadín because they're all going to come out at the same time to harvest, the same, ways of irrigation and all that. Well, look, I got a bunch of Desmettianas, and most of them are all different, right? Some are going to pop out at 4 years, some are going to pop out 5, 6, 7 years. Some are going to get giant, some are going to be medium. And I don't prioritize the small ones, obviously. But my point is, you're going to have, say you plant today Agave Desmettiana, you're going to have some harvestable in 4 years, some in 5, 6, 7 years, and all the seasons in between, right? Whereas if you get clones from all one farm, all one type of mother plant, and they're all popping up at year 5, and then the year 5, the agave is on the floor, you just went bankrupt. So you have to think diversity of how you're going to sell, how you're going to grow, all of that, okay? And Agave Desmettiana is a great crop for California, the United States. Shameless plug again, if you need any, hit me up. Farming and Gardening California on Instagram, or, most of my clients that listen to this podcast, there's a small amount of people that listen to this podcast, and most of them are my clients. If any of you clients out there want it, just hit me up directly at my phone number, and we'll set your ass up, man. Even if you don't buy Agave Desmettiana from me, it's a great crop for California and the United States, and I believe it's got a lot of potential. Like I mentioned, just make sure that where you're getting it from, the mother plant has been successful, right? Because, as I mentioned, the mother plant has more to do with for a farmer than the actual species, okay? Because where you're getting your mother plant, you really need to make sure that it was one of the best fucking plants, right? And that's the hard time sometimes as a farmer, because you want to harvest the best plant for the best piña, for the best spirits. But I'll tell you what, if you're the best farmer, you will never, ever fucking taste the best piña, because those agaves you save for seed and bulb. And unfortunately, that's just how life works. But sometimes maybe we save a handful of them, right? But you can't make a fucking line of spirits that way. That's why you gotta be close to farmers and be homies with them, because they'll hook you up. Yeah. Anyways, Agave Desmettiana, wonderful crop. I hope more people give it a chance in California and stop trying to just grow Agave angustifolia subspecies Tectiliana cultivar Blue Weber and subspecies Espadin. Yeah, that's a mouthful, huh? Agave angustifolia subspecies Tectiliana cultivar Blue Weber. There's actually 4 cultivars that were used and recognized as Tectiliana prior to the bullshit CRT and stuff. But yeah. Anyways, they're all angustifolias. Even Pacifica, which is used for Bacanora, yeah, that shit is a Pacifica. And yeah, there's lots of potential with this Agave Desmettiana. So hope you learned something today. Just wanted to talk a little bit as I walked the goats, and then came in here at the end to finish up this podcast. But just wanted to teach you a little bit about Agave Desmettiana. It's a crop I'm really investing into and going hard on, and I think it serves as a great alternative to the agave that we are currently planted in California. And I've seen a lot of people already utilize it to make spirits non-commercially, and I've tasted a dozen different expressions of it, and it's fucking amazing every time. I mean, most of us aren't distillers. Once again, we're just craft distillers, I would say, and we're really farmers. And many of us are pumping out great spirits that I know that if you bring in a master distiller behind any of these agaves, they could be something great. And we're experimenting with using it in many other ways, as I mentioned. And I always tell people the whole tequila market in the United States is 10 billion. I mean, you can make a 10 billion biomethane company with your agave. Like, there's a lot of other opportunities, so don't just look at spirits. But we all love spirits. Don't think that I hate it here on the podcast. Just want to make sure that my farmers stay in business. And yeah, have a great rest of the day. If you want any Agave Desmettiana or Fucurea or Angustifolias or Vilmorianas, any agave, you hit my ass up. Just harvested a bunch of Mapisagas if you want some of those. But have a great rest of the day, and I'll catch you on the next Agave and Cactus Talk. If you got an agave that you have questions on or want me to explore in a podcast, then leave it in the comments or hit me up and we'll explore it. I cultivate now over 100 different agaves, that I could readily name, but in mutations and hybrids, I probably have a couple hundred. So at this point, there are lots of agaves that I'm familiarized with, and if I can help someone save some money and not go out of business or plant agave or get into agave farming, I'm all with it. So have a great rest of the day, everyone, and I'll catch you on the next one. I'll put this out later, and yeah, have a good fall and planting season that is coming up for us here in California. Have a good one. Peace.